Do you have a hobby? We're going to discuss how hobbies fill your heart as well as your brain. More when we come back.
Hey guys, welcome back to episode number 15 of the Woo and Science podcast. We're going to welcome another special guest on the stage. This is Dr. Dominic Fetterly. And Dr. Dom, how are we doing?
I'm good. How are you guys? Thanks for having me.
We're doing great. Dr. Fetterly is the director of the NeuroLife Institute in Atlanta, Georgia, with Life University. So he gets to work on some really cool cases up there in Atlanta and gets to work a lot with students and work with the administration and some of the educational side of things too. So Dr. Dom and I have known each other for a while since he was in his chiropractic journey at school and stuff. So I'm excited to have him on and chat about some things. Hobbies is a fun topic, right? You often hear about hobbies as, I think sometimes people think of it as kind of almost as a waste of time or something to blow off steam. And some of those things can be true, but hobbies are, to be honest, they're a way to fill yourself up. A lot of times I'll have patients in the office, and Dom and Meg, I know you guys are the same with this. I ask somebody like, what do you do for fun? Or what are your hobbies? And they're like, well, I go to work and I come home and I make dinner for the kids and I clean up and then we, watch TV. I'm like, okay, so what do you do every day to fill yourself up or feel joy? And normally I get crickets on the end of that statement, right? Like, well, I don't know. I guess I'll do that when I retire or something.
No.
The idea is your brain needs something something like a hobby or something to kind of break from all of the rigidness of the day. When we go to work, we have deadlines and rigidity there. When we work with families or things like that, sometimes there's deadlines, rigidity. I know my brother's always taken my nephews to some sport, right? So a hobby is a way for you to do something for you, because your brain needs to be selfish every once in a while. It's great to do for others, don't get me wrong, like you've got to be able to give, but I know this one over here always tells me that I can't pour from an empty cup. I keep trying. Like I keep giving everything.
Rebels.
At some point, you can bleed some blood from a stone, right? But this idea that you got to do something that's a little bit selfish every once in a while and have a hobby. And Dom, I love your hobby. My big question for Dom is already, so how many books did you read last week? Because this dude chews through books like it's nobody.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, honestly, last week I finished 3. But that's between audiobook and actually reading a physical book. So, there's no shame in that. I enjoy the game, not the rigidness of it.
Hey, in 2025, Audible counts.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
That's exactly it. Yeah. And that's the thing is when starting a hobby, I feel like initially it's like a mountain to climb if you're bad at something. A lot of people, it's fairly difficult even just to maintain attention on a page. And for me, I'm not saying I don't know how to read. Of course, I'm a doctor and we see complex cases, but, reading for pleasure is something that in reality isn't something that comes second nature to a lot of people. So for me, what I would do is I'd go to a thrift store and I'd find a book and then I would find the audio version of it. And then I'd listen to some while I'm driving and then I'd pick it back up when I get home and kind of switch between the two to get a little warm up. And then before you know it, I mean, really, it's finding books that you enjoy. I've gone through the ins and outs of finding a book that I think sounds really great and super informational. And then when it's all said and done, I'm reading it and I'm falling asleep. So I wouldn't say that that's really so much fun as much as it is me feeding my brain and nourishing it and doing more work. So really reading for information and reading for fun can be two different things too. Although some information is fun, reading something like a young adult book, like a Harry Potter or Percy Jackson or, like kids series, that gets to be a lot of fun sometimes. And it gives your brain a chance to kind of unload. And as opposed to watching TV, you can kind of be more imaginative and picture it yourself. So for me, I mean, that's the thing is there's so many resources at our disposal. I think reading's a cool one just because a lot of people have access to it. And I don't think they really even realize that's the case. Something like a Goodreads account is something that you can track some books and see what other people are reading. Something like Libby or Hoopla, you can download stuff onto your phone, whether it's audiobook or the actual version of it, so you can read it on a tablet or some type of phone device. Ideally, reading it in person, like on a paperback, is a little better just to get your eyes away from a screen. We already spend enough time doing that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's been great. And honestly, it's pretty rewarding when you get to finish a book and talk to somebody about it. Just because our population, I want to say that you're in the top 70% if you've read one book in a year, if I
Oh,
remember that
wow.
correctly.
Wow.
So imagine all the people that you have things to talk about. If you say, "Did you read this book?" I mean, don't spoil it for people, of course, because if they want to read it for themselves and be surprised, but something as simple as, last week I read Jurassic Park and it was amazing. And I think it was way better than the movie, believe it or not, because the movie's pretty good, but
Hmm.
the book has some stuff in there that's great. So, yeah, you get a chance to open yourself up to conversation, and can't tell you. I mean, as you guys are in a office that people are looking for things to engage and talk about and use their imagination and just be happy in reality and have positive encounters. I think that's something that lifts people's spirits if we're able to talk about something that allows for them to engage and say, "Oh, I have some familiarity with that. Tell me more about it." I think
Hmm.
that's really cool that we can share that with people.
Yeah, I was just going to say, does that include my metaphysical anatomy books? Because that's what I read. And I get
Hey,
a lot of joy out of that
mhm.
because it's kind of
Hey,
neat making connections with, woo, this shoulder pain that I've had forever that I've seen everyone for. And this book's telling me, oh, I feel so understood. That's my hobby when it comes to reading.
the weirder the better, huh? Yeah, see,
Yeah.
but I like how you said it lets your imagination go too. Like,
Mhm.
what I would find as an enjoyable book to read, most people would look at like I had two heads, right? Because I do enjoy reading textbooks every once in a while because I like learning new things. But at the same time, you got to read something that lets your imagination go. And that's really where the difference for reading versus, watching something. For one, most people watch TV and play on their phone at the same time, or they watch TV and do something else, right? Whereas reading, you're kind of immersed in that world. And I think to some degree, you escape into that world and it makes you be present with what you're doing right now, right? If your mind starts to wander, you realize you got to the end of the page, you don't know what you read, forces you to go back to the top of the page and read it again. And so that forces some attention and focus and brings that prefrontal into the game a little bit. Although reading as we do in the Western world, left to right, I might suggest we read right to left. But that's another conversation for how much left frontal activation we have versus how much right. But I think that just that idea of being present and being in the moment allows you to really get to a different place when you're reading versus maybe doing some other kind of hobby.
So I got
Yeah,
to
it's
bring this back to the neuro guys because I'm going to look at anything that's like a hobby, or I hear people talking patients or people about things that fill them up that they enjoy doing. Whether that we have a patient that's in her 70s that goes rock digging. She digs crystals up. I just think that is the most amazing thing. But it fills her up being in the dirt and getting these crystals out, and then she does things in her garden, and it's that's her hobby. Like, she's put so much time and energy into it, but it really fills her up and it feels good when she's in that moment and doing that. The imagination gets going, right? If you're looking for things and you're imagining like what I'm going to find and things. So I'd like to know from like your guys' perspective, because I'm all about that feeling. So that feeling, if it's the hobby that you're loving and it's bringing joy to you, what is it that's happening in the brain that's like neurologically, from that perspective, that makes these hobbies so beneficial that people really should put that on their list of things, like, this needs to be a priority in my life. This is how it's affecting my neurological health.
Yeah,
yeah,
go ahead, Dom. I have my opinion, but I'm
yeah.
interested.
I mean, that we could go forever on this, which is so cool. I think of it, and this is a perfect example. Is it allows for you to put yourself in someone else's shoes or to imagine from different perspectives. And I think that that's a healthy thing to be able to evaluate just as a person with a moral conscience, right? So when we're thinking about a situation, we say, well, what would I have done in this? And do we really think this person's going to follow through with this? And it's not quite as, at least in my mind, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's like trashy TV versions of some of these books, and if you enjoy that, power to you. But in my mind, I like to read things about, moral quandaries or things that people are experiencing in their lives that I can try to relate to and understand what would I do different. And, without getting too off topic, sorry, I just want to throw this in there too, because one of the books, I mean, they may or may not mention this, but one of the books that I read last week, one of the three, was actually Dr. Meg's book. And I'll tell you, really good. It was amazing. I mean, I'm telling you, the first, I would say 50% of it, I read in one sitting, and it was like 10:30, 11 at night, and I'm like, I gotta go to bed. I just have to sleep because I'm an old man and I like reading and I like sleeping. So I woke up the next day and I read the rest. But
Oh my
man, I'll tell
God.
you, it was so good. So great work, Doc.
Shameless plug.
Oh no, seriously though, and I'll right on cue. Yeah, no, it's
She
great.
picked a cover finally too.
Yes.
I'm telling you, it was so good. And
Awesome.
honestly,
Thank
that's
you.
just it. Is as we're reading through it, just like you do with these other stories, you get a chance to try to be empathetic and understanding of what people are going through, and try to really place yourself in the situation and try to understand more.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think from a neurological perspective, there's that part like with reading, right? Because you can connect to somebody else on a different level. You have that imagination or imaginative component. But like for me, my hobby is doing something outside of reading. Like when I go flying, right?
Mhm.
It's a chance for me, like I am focused on that thing and it just makes me happy. Like it's
Mhm.
something I never thought I'd be able to do. I'm still in awe every time I'm like, birds fly, like I'm flying. This is amazing, right? Like if you ever watched, oh, what's his name? We should all be in amazement all the
Oh,
time when we're flying. Louis C.K.
yeah.
He's
Oh,
like, you're sitting in a chair in the
Sky.
sky. You're partaking in the miracle of flight, right? So it's
It's
just
true.
something that brings me joy, that makes me happy. It allows me, like, I kind of let everything go from the day. It allows me to just focus on what I'm doing at hand. If I'm reading something or if I'm building something is another great hobby, like from neurological perspective, like depending on whatever it is you're building, whether it's painting, whether it's drawing, whether it's building a table, you get to see the big picture. You see what that thing could be. Like Penny's a great one
Hmm.
with this. When you're rock hunting, you see this thing, like when she brings us the raw stones, they just look like a stone that I might kick if I was walking down the road. But
Hmm.
she knows what it is. She realizes that if she puts it in a tumbler, she's going to knock all of the other edges off of it.
Yep.
And it's
Clean it
going to
up.
turn into this beautiful, like shined stone that's just amazing looking. So, really getting into that right prefrontal. But the other side of it, when you do something that brings you joy, it activates a part of the brain called the default mode network.
Ooh.
And the default mode network is who you are on an unconscious level, right? So it connects you back to that. If you want to talk about doing work on inner child work, it connects you back to that person, right? It gets you out of those cognitive loops or that cognitive brain. It gets you out of the salience network of assigning value to everything, right? And it just allows you to be you for a little while with no expectations, no anything, and just kind of let all of that stuff go. And I think from a brain perspective, for me, I think that's the importance of finding something that brings you joy or something that just connects you back to that person you are, or that sense of self, that sense of who you are.
Hmm. Yeah, well, there's a big piece that you said though about that with, I go to work, I come home, I do this, I get things ready, whatever. It's all things that we have to do. Like, I hope that your job brings you joy and I hope that you find pleasure in those kinds of things. But those are also things that we have to do. But finding something that brings joy and that you're grateful for and that you're excited to go do. You guys best would explain everything that's pathways and their default mode network and all these things, but there's something about that from that emotional standpoint that we know when we're in a place of stress that we're thinking more lower parts of our brain that are keeping us more in a fight or flight place, which makes the chemicals in our body start reacting. We get the stomach tightness and we get, so when we can be in that place of having something that's happy, that's I look forward to, I get to go to carve out 20 minutes to an hour, whatever it is, you're allowing yourself to actually enjoy something that you enjoy. It doesn't, and I like that you said that about it doesn't, it's something for you. So it's not something that it's you and your spouse. It's something that you, because your spouse may be into something or your parent might be into or your kid might be into something different, but what about what fills you up?
Yeah, I'm not playing with your stones.
And
You
that's
can play
okay.
with your
I don't,
stones
and
and
I
your
fly with
rocks
you
all day,
occasionally, but
every once in a while.
but we have those things that it has to be something that you have to be able to take that time unselfishly, knowing that you have to do that for yourself to be able to you know give your body that illicit feeling of happiness and joy and all the other beautiful little feelings that come along with it, because gosh, most of the day we're spending our time in all these more heavy emotions and getting stressy things done and all that, so we have to make time for that kind of feeling in the body.
There's that word again. I still have not found that in Webster's. I keep looking. If feelings and emotions are a thing, I'm not seeing it show up there very much.
Hmm. Yeah, and you know, because I think a lot of people too is you can tie this into even just being able to have a meditative place. You know,
Yes.
so when people think about oh, where's your happy place? You know, I've got two things that come to mind. One is being on a snowboard, laying on my back, and having snow fall on you, and it's just heavy as heck, and it feels great.
Aw.
And the other one is sitting in a hammock with a book outside between two trees. And both of those, I think I could easily throughout the day check in and just immediately get this sense of, oh, this feels really nice. Okay, I'm back. This is great.
I love
Is
that.
there a midget riding a tricycle with a cowboy hat and two
Oh, it's
things of
just
beer
Happy
anywhere in that?
Gilmore.
Like Happy
Yeah,
Gilmore?
I was
yeah,
gonna say you
Sorry.
got to give the movie
When you
reference.
say go to my happy place, every
yeah.
time somebody says the word happy place, I go to Happy Gilmore.
It is unfortunately, yes, that's a prevailing thing for Adam Sandler.
Part two of that movie's coming out. I think
There you
maybe
go.
Next
sometime
month.
If
July.
there's not a return of what you're talking about, then I think that's a disappointment.
Hey, I heard Eminem's in the new one too, so we'll see how that whole thing
They're bringing
happens.
them from all over.
Yeah, I think it's Eminem. I think
Oh
someone
boy.
told me Eminem's in the new Happy Gilmore. I don't know if that's a real thing or not, but
Okay, so
I
we're doing
mean,
a
it
big
wouldn't
shout
surprise
out
me.
for this.
Oh, that's great.
hey, you can have midgets on tricycles in your happy place while you're reading a book. It
You can do
works, you
whatever you
know.
want. It's your happy place. If it makes you happy, you do it.
Yeah, and when you go to those places of joy too, it decreases that hypothalamic activation, and it just helps to kind of reset your system. And it doesn't, like you said, if you're always doing for others, it's great to live in a life of service. One of our
Mhm.
mentors, all three of us on this call, is Dr. LaMarche, who we're hoping to get on for the podcast as well. But he's been a mentor of ours, and one of the things I've learned from him more than anybody else is living a life of service. Because when you do for others, that does for you too in a lot of ways. But it's nice to live, unselfishly. But every once in a while, your brain does need to be selfish, and you do need to do something for you, something to fill you up, right? It's just going to allow you to show up better for everyone else in your life. If you're happy, everybody else is happier around you too.
Mhm.
So when you're kind of running on fumes and at the edge of things, why do I always get the looks when I say this? I gotta stop. I keep giving you bullets to put in your
You're doing it
ammo
and it's
against me.
recorded.
Hmm.
No, I paused it a
Oh,
while
did
ago.
you?
Yeah, that's definitely not on recording. You're never going to be able to use that against me.
Hmm.
Yeah, we end up with a lot of those. I need to stop teaching and doing stuff because I give you enough ammo against me to
Hmm.
get me sometimes. But yeah,
But
it
you've
allows you to show
recognized
up.
and you definitely
Hey,
like you have to be able to having things that light your fire, businesses and things that you're running and doing and stuff like that is great, but there has to be some kind of balance, right? And it always comes back to balance with everything, doesn't it? So if you're always driving and you're always in this stressful place and your emotions are crap and you're in a bad mood because you're just short fused and all these kinds of things, which is most of the world, I feel like, because people are stressed out. Find something that can lift your spirit, something that is just for you that you can spend. Even I liked what was the 5 minute morning, was it
6 minute morning, 7 minute morning,
7 minute morning? We did
miracle mornings,
miracle mornings,
and it was the
yes.
7 minute morning. Yeah.
Yes, we did that for a little while, and just having like time each day that I woke up and I did a little workout and I did a little reading and I did a little meditation and just all those little things. Even though at first thinking that, well, this is silly that I'm doing this, it became a hobby for me. Like I looked forward to, okay, I'm going to sit there, and then maybe later I read more of the book. But I've never been a big reader. I've just never been a fan of reading. Like, Dom, like you plow through these books, and man, it takes me forever to get through a book. But then I liked having, different things to
Right. Brought to you by.
brought to you by. But having that moment to like be able to do a little bit of a workout, a little bit, just all these little things became something that I got up and I looked forward to. I'm getting up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning to do all of these little things, but it brought me joy. It made me happy to be doing this and kind of changed the way that my mornings went, which starts your day off on a better. We've got patients that, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily so much a hobby than a habit, but kind of get up in the morning and do like a brain tap, do one of the meditative kind of things. It's setting your neurology in a better place, but it's filling you up. You're that high feeling of like, gosh, I feel really good right now. What a great way to start out the day. great way to end the day too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And,
I don't know. I
you know,
don't
you look
start.
at it, and I always look at it as a way of, in reality, when I do something like read or, even if it's go for a walk in nature, whatever these things are, it is something that afterwards I'm excited to return back to people, to serve patients, to see, everybody in my life. So it's one of those things that it truly allows for me to be excited to proceed, because I don't consider myself necessarily the most introverted or the most extroverted. I'm kind of a mix of both. So in reality, that's kind of my, if I were to call it such a thing, introvert time, so that I can fuel up and be ready just to be with people again, and really enjoy it and have things to share with them and have them share with me. So I always look at it as a way of how can I then replenish and return back to serving and being around people and getting the most out of it, instead of just kind of trudging around and, being tired and lethargic.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if we're kind of finding some hobbies for people, right,
Mm-hmm.
and leaving with an idea of
Mhm.
what are hobbies that are good for the brain and good for the soul?
Mm.
Any good books, any good hobbies, any suggestions for somebody who's sitting there going, I don't like anything. What do you want me? I don't like to read. I don't want to go for a walk in nature. What are some hobbies or some ideas, or what's a good book to start with to kind of jump in if, reading can be their hobby?
Yeah. So, I mean, everybody's a little different, and that's the cool thing. So, what I would say is to each their own, whatever you like. And I'm not actually just like plugging you guys just for the sake of plugging you guys. Dr. Meg's book really is very great. When it is published, you guys got to pick it up and check it out. It's awesome, and it's very um, inspirational, and there's a lot of hope in there. So things like that are uplifting and a lot of fun. And then, there's into the world of, because I really enjoy reading people's stories. I like connecting with the person. It's a
Mm-hmm.
challenge for me, and that's the thing is I'm challenging myself by trying to find a hobby. It's something that I'm like, I don't have time for this, I'm not going to do it. But in reality, I set aside the time, and I be sure that 20 minutes before bed, 20 minutes when I wake up, that I read something. And it's always a little longer than that, just because I end up actually learning that I enjoy it. But what I would say is, there's a few things, if you want to get some information and be able to learn from it. There's some books that are really great, like Dr. Meg's. Then there's things like there's a book that I actually just recently read called Meditations for Mortals. I really enjoyed that.
Interesting.
um, there's another one by Matt Haig that I just read that was really great, and I enjoyed that. That one was called, actually, I have my Goodreads pulled up right here so that I can find it for you. How to Stop Time. That was a lot of fun.
I need to know that because then I have more hours in the
It's a
day. I
superpower. I
figure that out.
say that
I can get
constantly. It'd
more
be a
stuff done.
superpower.
I can
Mhm.
take on more jobs.
Oh,
And
Dom, why did you tell
it's
him about that one?
so funny. It's not what you think. It's fiction. So actually, it would really engage your right brain as opposed to the left drive, drive, drive. So hey, it's maybe a trap door that you're going to fall in, and
I
actually it'll be
like
good
it.
for you after all.
You need both. You need both.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
What about
Yeah.
you for the females out there? What are some good hobbies to look at?
So I definitely think if depending on how woo you are, getting into different things like looking for crystals, doing things like that can be extremely interesting, because as you're learning about things, you're also applying it to yourself where you can utilize it to help and become aware. And I've watched lots of people really since we moved down here and started kind of introducing some crystals to people, how as they started getting more into it and learning how to build grids or to do things, like going digging. There's quite a few of our patients. We have one in particular that loves it and does it the most. But as they're looking into what the properties, what the frequencies of these crystals mean, how much that's helping them in their own healing journey, and that gives them that empowerment. So it's an exciting thing to look what I found, and this one's for this, and I feel like that's
And you call me a nerd.
what
You nerd out with rocks and
I
stones,
do.
and you call me a nerd.
Oh no, but I'm a
We're
nerd
all
in a
nerds
different
in the
way.
best way. It's okay.
Yes, in a different way. That's
Endearing.
all.
It's endearing. Yeah, it's fine.
Exactly. Exactly. You got to sprinkle your stuff. You sprinkle your knowledge noodles and other different hobbies. I definitely think doing things like I'm a big fan of walking out on the beach. So connecting with nature in some way, shape, or form, just going out and grounding. Like I take the dog for a walk in the morning and I walk barefoot around the neighborhood just to ground and just connect with the earth and just appreciate. You had said a long time ago, and I think this was actually when we were still in Atlanta, how you would have people go and look at the trees and to like
Yeah.
trace the trees. I definitely love sacred geometry, and looking into all of that was very fascinating and educational for me as well. I find myself doing those kinds of things in the morning to appreciate the sunrise, even if it's a cloudy day. I know the sun's come up and there's light, and to look at the trees and the way that the clouds are, those kinds of things. Definitely, it's something that I try to focus on when I'm doing certain things. And it's only going to be for like 10 minutes walking the dog, but it's something to really elicit that positive feeling and something to focus my attention on. And then I may come in and share something with you, or maybe I find something, on the
Usually
ground that
there's words that are said.
lots of words quota I gotta hit each day. But those kinds of things can be, very, very helpful. Things like you said, I liked how you said it, where you kind of turned your mind off, where you can kind of not be in the place of stress that most of us live in, but something that fills you up. And that's kind of like, if it's something like you love flying, you love reading, Dr. Dom. I love, crystals and energy stuff and colorful things. So if those things, find ways that you can get involved, in different groups, and connect with other people and stuff like that, can be extremely beneficial. And it's going to fire up that passion, so it's going to be something that you will set time aside for yourself, whatever that may be. But there's so many different groups and ways that you can connect with people too. You can really take that hobby and expand it, connecting with others, which is a whole other topic, but definitely the importance of connecting with people.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
ultimately, I mean, just finding something that brings you joy, right? If it can involve movement, if it can involve something around the health, the last little bit I'll leave you with is, if your life is go, 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 left brain, like data, schedules, everything, try to find a hobby that lights up your right brain. Create something, build a table, paint, do something that does the opposite of where you spend most of your time. Again, coming back to that balance. If you're a painter and that's your job and all you do is write books and create and do all of that, you might find something that's a little bit more left brain. Maybe it's a sport, or maybe it's learning to, you know, play something or do something that is a little bit more data driven, that is enjoyable and brings you joy, but maybe challenges to get you outside of that box you live in most of your day. But ultimately, just do something that brings you joy, do something that makes you happy, do something that fills you up so that you're not pouring from an empty cup, or
He's
one with
learning.
a bunch of holes punched in it all over the place. Um, Either way, but doing something that brings you joy, because it'll fill your heart, it'll make you happy, bring you joy, and it'll fill your brain and help with all the connections up there, especially that area we always talk about, that prefrontal cortex and that cerebellum. Dom, thank you so much for being on. We appreciate your time. Thank you guys for listening and playing along. We'll see you next time for episode 16.